Alright, got an 8th generation Accord here. It needs a new left rear wheel bearing, so come along and show you how I do it. Now this one was a little bit of a challenge to diagnose because the tires that were on here were masking the noise for this wheel bearing. You could tell that there was a wheel bearing that was bad, but it was hard to tell where it was coming from. So the tires were replaced because they were really loud and obnoxious. Now we got some nice new Yokohamas on here. They're super quiet. Once we did that, it was easy to tell that it was coming from the rear. And then I just took it on the road and just did a little slalom back and forth. And whichever way the car leaned, you could hear when it leaned this way, the noise got loud. When the car leaned the other way, the noise almost completely went away. So that's how I was able to tell which side it was. So let's get this thing repaired. Alright, first thing I'm going to do, chalk the front wheels. Both of them. Alright, and looking at the back of the vehicle, the tow hook right here, we're going to put our jack right there and lift the vehicle up. Alright, there's the rear wheel, and coming forward from the rear wheel, we can see these two little cutouts right here, one and one. Right in the middle here, this is a reinforced piece. So once we jack the vehicle up, I'm going to put my jack stand right here, and then I'm going to put my jack stand on the other side also. I'm not going to get under a vehicle without jack stands. And I'll be wearing safety glasses while I do this repair also. And you can see I'm not making stuff up as I go. These are the designated lift points that I'm showing you on the vehicle. Alright, when using the correct designated lift point in the back, you need a jack that goes up pretty high. And so the one I'm using, this is from Harbor Freight. This is the 3-ton Super Duty from Daytona. And there's the model number right there. Alright, now we'll get the wheel off. We'll get these 5 lug nuts off. I'm going to use my impact wrench 19mm socket. As always with any wheel, if you don't have an impact wrench, you're going to have to either put the parking brake on or break them loose while the vehicle's still touching the ground. Alright, now we want to release the parking brake so it's off, otherwise we're not going to get those brakes off. Alright, we're going to have to get this caliper off, so before we do that, we'll loosen up the, or we'll remove the bolt from the parking brake cable right here, and then we'll pop this off. And then where's the brake line? The brake line, the bolt right here to this brake line, we're going to take that off. And while I'm thinking of it, have you ever heard Honda tout, you know, multi-link rear suspension? Well, see this bar and the other bar, multi-link. Alright, we'll just reach around and get that 12 right there with an impact. And that one's off. And let's see if we can get this one right here. Is it long enough? Barely. Go the right way. There we go. Then we can just take this, and it's nice and stuck. And we can just pull it off like that. We can just move it out of our way. There. Now as you can see, the bolts are not the same size. Don't get them mixed up. The longer one, that one should go to our brake hose, then this one should go to the parking brake. And as you can see, I put them back, I spin them in just a little bit just so I don't lose them. Alright, now we're going to get the brake caliper off. We're just going to take the mounting bolts off. We got one right there, and one, if we can see around all this stuff. Can you see where my finger is? No, right there. So we're going to zip both of those off. Alright, as you can see, I'm just going to reach around here and not get it off. The 3/8 inch does not have the mustard with all the extensions. Alright, I just put a socket and ratchet on here, a long ratchet. What is that, a 3/8 extension? We'll see if we can't break it loose. There we go. And we should be able to do the same with the bottom with no extension. There we go. Now they're loose. And there's the setup I used. 18-inch flex head ratchet and 3-inch extension. This one had a wobble on there. I'm not sure if I needed the wobble, probably not. And a 17mm shallow socket. And you can see, maybe you can't, they're loose now. I can spin them out by hand. And hopefully you can see here, this bottom bolt is loose too. Alright, you can see my top bolt's almost all the way out, and our brakes are loose. We're going to just take this whole assembly off as one. So I'm going to remove this. I'm going to need two hands, and then you see I have a piece of mechanics wire. I'm just going to tie this, just going to tie the brake caliper up right here, just so it's up out of our way. Alright, looking back behind here, I don't know if you can tell, but right on that caliper, right there, this mounting, right where my thumb's touching, there's a little spacer right there, or washer. There's supposed to be one right here, but it fell off. And I don't know if you can see it, it's down right there. We'll get it as soon as we get the rotor off. We just got to make sure to get those back in place when we put the brake caliper assembly back on. And this, my camera does not like this Harbor Freight light. Alright, now we got to get these two rotor screws off. And you can see if you just try to turn them, it wants to spin the whole rotor. But we're going to use an impact screwdriver. This is from Vessel. I featured this in a couple Honda rotor videos. But this is a number 3 JIS screw. And so we'll just put it in there. You can see, loosens it right out. And we'll do the same for the other one. And there we see, screws are out. And where's the camera? You can see it does not damage them. And we can just pull our rotor off, set it aside, and you can see there's our little washer. So we got to keep track of these and make sure we don't lose them, make sure they go back where they're supposed to go. And while we're here, we'll just take the other one off. We just got to remember to get them back on. Alright, and here you can see, here's our hub assembly. I don't know if you can hear that, but it sounds like crap, and it feels like crap. I can feel all kinds of just garbage in there. So we'll get this thing replaced. Now if you look close, coming from the back side, there's 4 bolts, and you can see the ends of the threads on 2 of them right there. And then there's one down there right there. And where's the other one? The other one is right here by my finger. So we'll hit those 4 from this side, seeing as we can see the threads with some penetrating oil. Then we'll go on the other side and break the bolts loose. let's see, what am I using? I'm just using WD-40 rust penetrant, rust release penetrant spray. Can't even say it. Ooh, with blue torch. Alright, looking from behind, you can see there's our 4 bolts. We got to get those bad boys out. Alright, what do you think? Can the Milwaukee get them out without an extension on it? These are 17s also. Alright, no problem. There's one. 2. Alright, for these last 2 I switched to a wobble extension. And we'll see if we can knock them loose. Yeah, it did it. Didn't like it that much, but it did it. The extensions, whoops, really take away from the power. Let's get this last one. There we go. Alright, here's where the fun begins. Now we got to get this hub assembly off. And a lot of times it gets rusted in place inside there. And so there's a couple different techniques we can use to get them off. And I'll grab the new hub assembly and show you what we can do. Alright, here's our new hub assembly. They come complete just like this. This one is from Honda. You can't get the bearing and press it in and out separately. You have to buy the whole unit on this. And it sits in the vehicle like this. And you can see right here, this ring right here is where it sits inside. And that's where rust will develop. Between this, and it'll rust right to the knuckle. And they won't come out. Especially if you live in a salty area. They will not come out. So there's a couple things we can do to get it out. And obviously this is connected, so all we need to do is sitting in the car, if we can just get this to move just a little bit, and I mean just as long as that moves just a little bit, because you see it's kind of keyed in there, so we can't move it a ton, but all we got to do is just barely get it to crack, and it'll break that rust bond and it'll come out. And so we can hit it, you know, with just a chisel and a hammer, or we can hit it with a chisel and an air hammer right there and just try to get it to move a little bit, and then we can get it out, you know. And then, you know, sometimes you can hit right here a little bit to help it, to massage it along, but usually if you get it to just crack a little bit, these things will come out. So here's a close-up. So basically we can take a chisel like this, just put it right here on one of the ears. It doesn't matter, we could go over here, we can go right here, and just hit it with a hammer right there and just try to break it loose, you know, like that. Or we use an air hammer to do the same thing. We just come in here like this. It doesn't matter if we damage it, it's getting replaced anyway. And we can hit it like that, and usually that'll break it free. Now, if people bring me their cars from, you know, like Pennsylvania or Chicago or something, which they do, they like to come to Arizona and hang out and get their cars fixed, I'll show you Plan B. Alright, and here she is, Plan B, the Destroyer. And so, with this beast, you just put it on right over the lugs like that. Can you see that? So right over the 2 lugs, and then I have a kit that has nuts that we put on here, so we don't use the lug nuts that came with the car. We don't want to destroy them. But we put it on there, we bolt it up tight, we bring it up here like this, and we take a big hammer, bigger than this one, and we just hit it right there, and I guarantee you it will come off. So we'll go with Plan A first before we bring Plan B out. Alright, let's take the air hammer. We're in our eye and ear protection, so I'm probably talking really loud. Let's go ahead and knock it loose. This is an Arizona car, probably isn't on there too tight. There we go. Yeah, see, it didn't develop that rust ring that you will have when vehicles are in other areas of the country. So that was pretty easy. And while I'm thinking of it, there's a rubber O-ring that needs to be replaced, and the new one comes with it, at least if you get it from Honda. I'm going to make sure that that is with the hub and not stuck in there. And if you're striking or hitting on something, safety glasses. And obviously if it's loud, hearing protection. You'll regret it later if you don't use it. Alright, you can see there's our old hub, there's our new hub. They're exactly the same. Always make sure your parts match. And there's the part number for this model. Now, there was a little bit of grease that I kind of just wiped off, cleaned it up a little bit. And on the back here, obviously we want to make sure our O-ring is there, and then I took it off and I put just the slightest coat of silicone grease on there just to get it ready to go. So now this thing is ready to install. And because we're reusing the rotor, I cleaned this face off, and then underneath I cleaned that off. I just used my oh, where is it? There it is. I just used my angle grinder with a little wheel on there, and I cleaned this mating surface up. And we always got to be careful. We got a wheel speed sensor that we did not pull out, so we always got to work around that. In this case it was no problem because I didn't have a bunch of rust, but if I did, you got to be careful that we don't want to damage that. Now as you can see, I put a very thin layer of multi-purpose grease. I left the very front lip alone. This is where the O-ring is going to sit. And a lot of times rubber O-rings and grease do not mix, so I tried to keep them separate. And then with the silicone on there, that should help protect it also. And then obviously if these were, you know, rusted, I would have cleaned these off, but these were just fine. Now right here, as you can see, I have this washer back installed, and here's the other washer. And so what I do, I just take a pair of pliers and I just, you know, grab these little tangs right here and just bend them out just a hair, all three of them. And then when you push it in, it'll stay locked in there, because you see how it's loose right now. You can see I bent these and it just grabs it. So you just have to open them up a little bit so it'll grab the inside right there. That's how they're installed at the factory, and what happens is they just get loose over time. So if you just bend them back, they'll be tight again, and then we won't have to worry about them falling out when we put the caliper in. So as you can see, now this one's back in and it's tight. And when you bend them, I mean, all you have to do is bend those a hair. I mean, just a hair, all three. And by doing that, it gets the clearance back where it'll grab. So now these things should not fall out. Now, I don't know if you can see these bolts. If you can see right in between the threads there, there's actually blue Loctite in there. So we're going to Loctite these back just like they were from the factory. I'll just use some medium strength. I'll just put a little bit right there, just on the threads that engage, not the part that sticks out. And we'll get these bolts and the hub back in. We don't need much. Alright, now I'm just going to take the hub and we can just drop it in place. Just like that. And you'll feel the O-ring kind of pop in. Now we'll grab the bolts and get them all in. As you can see, I'm able to tighten these all by hand all the way down. Because the threads were fairly clean. If they weren't, I would have cleaned them up. So now you can see they're all down there hand tight. Now we'll tighten them in a crisscross pattern just like we would lug nuts. And of course, it's not a bad idea. Peek right here. Make sure, you know, the gap is closed up. You don't want to see any of these bolts sticking out further than the rest of them. So it's in there tight. Now we just need to tack it down. Alright, difficult shot to shoot, but I'm just going to take my 3/8 inch ratchet, a short extension with a 17mm socket, and we'll tighten these up. And obviously we want to bring it in evenly. So we don't want to do one bolt too much. Alright, they all feel pretty snug. Now we just got to torque it. Alright, Honda decided these bolts should be 72.3 foot-pounds, so we're just going to go, if you could see that at all, we're going to do 73 just to be on the safe side. 72.3. Who thought that was a good idea? Alright, not easy to torque with all this crap and the camera in the way, but it's done. All four are torqued tight, and obviously we want to make sure all our bolts should be sticking out about the same, and we should see an even gap all the way around between here and the knuckle. Alright, I just put a little bit of fluid film on the surface here to prevent rust, and you can see our bearing nice and smooth and quiet, just like it should be. Now we'll get the rotor installed. Alright, we'll take our rotor, which is all nice and cleaned up, and our screw holes right there have to match right there. So we'll just put that on, and we'll put our rotor screws back in. Alright, we'll put our rotor screws in, and I always put just a little bit of anti-seize on here so we can get them off easy next time, because it'll probably be me taking them off next time too. And that makes it a little bit easier. Suppose if it's your car and you want to leave them off, you can always do that. And all we need to do is get them tight. That's it. We don't have to kill them. Alright, as you can see, I set my caliper bolts in place, but they're not coming through on the other side. And we want to make sure that these washers are still intact. This will make it a little easier. Now I'm just going to undo this, put it in place. And I find it's easier to set those bolts in place like that. Makes it easier to find it. Otherwise it can be a pain in the butt trying to line up the hole and then grab the bolt, trying to find the hole and put it in. No fun. I found this way is easier. As you can see, they're started by hand. Now we can just put a ratchet in here and get them all tightened up. Alright, and 80 foot-pounds is the torque spec for those two bolts. Alright, we'll put our brake hose back. If I can work around you guys. Alright, now we'll just attach our parking cable. We'll bring it back here We need to hook it onto here like that, and then this part we pull back around, and it'll kind of just fall into place where it belongs back here. And then we'll take our bolts and put it in. There we go. Alright, that's what it looks like back together. And we just want to make sure, now I can get a whole finger in there. We want to make sure that this is not on the arm here. Alright, now we can take a second look over our work. Now I pulled this off. We don't want to leave that hanging in there. Let's see, we torqued our caliper, we torqued the 4 bolts back there, and we put our brake hose on and our parking brake. And of course we want to make sure that these brackets are back flat, not only here, but where is it? Back over here, right where my hands are. We want to make sure that for the parking brake that's back flat, otherwise it ain't going to work properly. And everything looks good to go. Let's get the wheel back on. And we'll get it lowered back down and then we'll torque them. And we'll get our wheel chocks. Alright, we'll torque the lug nuts to 80 foot-pounds. Alright, probably should have put the parking brake on and checked it before I torqued. Alright, feels good. Now we'll double check the torque to make sure it's alright because it was moving around. Well, there you go. That's how I do the wheel bearing / hub assemblies on these 8th generation Accords. This one came out easy. Sometimes they don't come out easy. That's the way it goes. And as always, if you enjoyed the video or it helped you out, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Thanks for watching.